This podcast is brought to you by Contessa Digital.
Hey love, welcome back to Confidently Cherished, and I'm your host, Keisha Rice. I'm a dating coach for ambitious women of faith, and happy birthday to me. So I am recording this episode slightly before my birthday, and it will probably be actually after my birthday by the time this is posted, but I'm telling you this because I had honestly planned for this episode to be probably a really long one and something about, 30 lessons about love that I've learned in my 30s. And, I may still do that episode at some point, but when I was thinking about possible lessons that I could include on that list, it all came down to one thing. And that one thing was, as within, so without. So I don't know if you've ever heard this phrase, as above, so below. And if you are a spiritual, religious person like I am, you've probably heard it because I've heard Christians say some version of this. I've heard Buddhists say some version of this. And I've also heard people say this who are more spiritual law of attraction types have used this phrase of as above, so below, or as above, so beneath. And it basically means that whatever is happening in the spiritual realm, so heaven, the universe, whatever you see as a higher realm or higher plane, those things are reflected in what happens on earth. And I was thinking about this concept and how it also applies to our relationships, which is why the lesson that I want to teach you today is as within, so without. Not too long ago, I did a podcast interview, and before the interview, we were talking about the things that we were going to discuss once we were actually recording. And I ended up getting into a bit of an argument with the host, which is why I'm not going to say what podcast this was. But in the course of our argument, we were in general talking about self-love in this episode. And I was saying that the love you have for yourself is the most important relationship you will ever have. And she cut me off as I was saying this. She was like, well, second to your relationship with God, that relationship is more important. And I was talking to my dad about this. If you've been listening for a while, you know that I am a PK, I'm a preacher's kid. And I was telling him how I didn't agree with that sentiment. Because don't get me wrong, I was raised, in a very religious background, and I consider my relationship with God to be incredibly important. So, I am not trying to negate the belief in any sort of higher power whatsoever. But here's what I do know. I do know that it is out of the relationships with ourself that everything else flows, including a relationship with God or with a higher power. And I know this from my own personal experience. I know this from my experience with friends, and I know this from my experience with clients. And, I've mentioned this before, maybe about 85% of my clients are Christian, but, I also have clients who are Jewish, who are Hindu, who are Muslim, and I have clients who consider themselves to be highly spiritual as well. And I see this play out in their lives as well. So I know this is universal. I know it's not, I know that this isn't a thing that's relegated to one belief system, right? And here's what I've seen. People can believe in God. They can believe in a higher power. They can ascribe to this idea that there's something that is always looking out for them. But when your self-esteem and your self-worth are in the toilet, you start to come up with reasons why that same higher power that you believe is good, that you believe looks out for everyone, won't look out for you, won't provide the things that you want in life or need in life for you. You feel like you are undeserving of that kind of kindness, grace, mercy from anyone, including God. And because of this, I have seen women say that they have such a strong belief, such a strong faith, and they are constantly looking out for others and praying for others, but they've given up on doing that for themselves because their own beliefs about themselves and what they think is a lack of their worthiness keeps them from actually really and truly hoping and believing in the things that they profess to believe in. I have seen this from women who it is clear that their purpose in life is to do good for others. It is clear that their purpose in life is to reach other people, to inspire other people, to help other people improve their lives and change their lives. And it's also clear that their faith somehow plays a role in that. This is why I'm very intentional about saying that I work with ambitious women of faith. When I was in college, one of the many things I studied, because I have multiple degrees, but one of the many things I studied was religious studies. And, I don't require that any of my clients ascribe to a particular faith, but because faith and spirituality are very important in my life, it helps me relate to clients who also have some sort of faith system in their lives that they strongly believe in. And I've seen this happen so often where that foundation that they have is tied into a larger purpose for helping others, and they're not getting out there and doing the things that they want to be doing, that they should be doing to make their corner of the world a better place because of these feelings of low self-worth. And, it's not just faith and spirituality. It's in other areas as well. I see so many women who want to be in healthy relationships, and they want someone to love them. They want someone to cherish them. They want someone who allows them to truly feel seen and feel heard. But they can't give that love to themselves. And because they don't take the time to listen to themselves, to understand what their wants and needs are, because they don't take the time to care for themselves, to really give themselves time, they oftentimes attract people who don't give them that care and consideration and attention either. And even when they do attract a man who is attentive, who does truly love them and care about them, that concept is so foreign to them because they haven't even learned how to love themselves, that when they see someone else trying to love them, they don't trust it. It doesn't feel right to them. It doesn't feel authentic. They immediately treat men who treat them well with suspicion, or they don't allow the man to treat them well. They don't allow themselves to be in a position of being vulnerable and receiving because they don't give it to themselves. You know, there's so much content on social media about self-care that portrays it as bubble baths and lighting candles. There's nothing wrong with those things. My husband will tell you that I spend plenty of time in the bathtub. So I enjoy those things as well. But I know that true self-care is allowing myself the time to actually listen to myself. You know what I mean? To calm all the chaos outside, to calm, even some of the inner chatter that's not productive, to really listen to myself and give my own feelings a voice. Oftentimes that's in the form of journaling, or, sometimes I find myself praying to God, and after I've been praying about a certain situation, taking the time to have this conversation with myself about these things I'm asking for, these things that I want. Why do I want these things? What am I trying to accomplish? Are my motives pure? Are my motives really, or are the things that I'm wanting, are they really going to get me the thing that I really want? I remember being younger and, being an overweight child and going on this huge journey in my early high school years, so like 9th, 10th grade, to lose all this weight and to get really skinny. And I did. I got so skinny that I ended up with an eating disorder. I got so disciplined with counting calories and the food that I was eating that I ended up messing myself up. And during the process of healing from that, so, seeing a therapist, seeing a nutritionist, all of that, I learned that the goal was never about losing weight. Not really. The goal was about the fact that because I didn't like my body, I was convinced that the rest of the world didn't as well. And I was convinced that because the rest of the world also didn't like my body, they didn't like me as a person. And this whole journey of going through extreme weight loss to the detriment of my health was about trying to be liked more and be loved more and get more attention. So, it seemed to 15, 16-year-old me that I had a goal, and that goal was lose weight. But the real goal was to be more loved. And, it took support from my parents and later on other people in my life, friends, other family members. It took therapy. It took some time for me to really grasp the concept of, first of all, loving myself at whatever size I was going to be, but it's just really loving myself in general and what that meant. It took me some time to realize that my self-worth is innate in just who I am as a person, that all sorts of circumstances can change, right? Over time, obviously my weight can change. Just the general status of my health can change. My hobbies can change. Again, I have multiple degrees and certifications, so my career my career can change, and it has changed more than once. All these different things. My circle of friends can change. I think about the fact that, in my 30s now, I have friends that I have been friends with since I was 12, 13 years old. And I am so blessed to have them and to have those people have been part of my journey for as long as they have. But I also have friends who I feel incredibly close to that I've only known, months, less than a year. And I feel a deep connection with them as well. And even when I think about friends that I've had for, what I said, I've had friends that I've known since I was, 12 or so. So these friendships are now 2 decades long. And even those friendships, like, I still have them, but even those have changed over the years. Maybe the level of closeness has changed, where I'm closer to that person now than I was back then, or we're not as close as we used to, or how we relate to each other has changed. I can think of friends, for example, that we were close at one point in time and then kind of went our separate ways, and it was some common circumstance that brought us back together, like my decision to go back to school and get my second degree. I became closer friends with someone who I had known, years prior, but she made the decision to go back to school at the same time that I did. And it was just kind of having this common stress, of being in school full time and also working full time and going back to college as an adult. We'd really bonded over that. Or friends who, I can think definitely when I was single and there was a certain group of my friends who seemingly all got married at the same time. And some of those friendships have been kind of consistent the entire time I've known those people. But I definitely have friends who, when we reached that stage where they were married and I was still very much out dating and all of that, we weren't as close. And it wasn't until, after my husband and I became exclusive and, we were at least engaged and like planning to get married and all of that, that maybe there were some things that they went through that I didn't quite understand until I was married myself. And that helped bring us together. But also just being honest, the older you get, and I'm really using older in quotations because I truly believe age is relative. And some women are going to see this as true as early as like their early 20s. Some women aren't going to understand what I'm saying until they're, late 30s, 40s, till they're much older than I am right now. And the older you get, the harder it becomes to maintain friendships and to form friendships. So, there are some people who just kind of give up and accept that. And there are other people that, this is the case with me. I started to realize that there were certain friendships that I had that ended, or if they didn't end, like we were technically still friends, but we didn't really talk, so they cooled down. And these things happen because of misunderstandings that were petty, right? These were things that, don't get me wrong, I definitely in the past have had some toxic friendships, and those are people who have been cut out of my life permanently. They're not coming back. I'm not allowing that. But, as I gained maturity, there were some friendships of mine that I recognized that were like, hey, the way things ended between me and that person was just really stupid. Or again, in cases where it didn't really end, but we drifted apart, the reason for the drifting was neither of us making as much of an effort as we should have, but those were good relationships. So, I say this because back to that whole idea of as within, so without. Oftentimes that happened at the same point that I was realizing those things about myself. I realized things like there were certain relationships I was in with men in which I was so caught up in being that person's girlfriend that I lost a part of who I was. I was so caught up in making the relationship work that I was letting go of boundaries. I was settling for less than I deserved. I was compromising my standards to the point where the relationship would end and I would realize that I had lost friends in that relationship because, again, I was too caught up in my boyfriend at the time to be concerned about, my real friends and what they were up to. I lost myself in some of those relationships because I was so busy trying to please another person that I neglected myself. And when I think about those relationships, again, as within, so without, I was losing myself. I was giving myself this message that I wasn't worthy, that, I didn't deserve a certain level of happiness, that I wasn't good enough. And because I was giving myself this message, I would pour so much into someone, oftentimes a boyfriend, thinking that if I did all of that, that he would love me to the point that his love for me and the way that he showed his love for me would be proof that I was worthy of something. And that once I had that proof, I could love myself more because I could see clearly, oh, this person who is great on paper or who other women want, all of those things, because he was so awesome and I was so trash. If I could hoodwink him and trick him into loving me, then that would just be proof that I was amazing. And that once I had that proof, not just him, other people would see that I was amazing. And I myself would really, truly believe that I was amazing because I had this proof in the form of a man loving me. And I hope as I'm saying this, you realize how backwards that is. It is when we love ourselves that we have the courage, we have the determination, we have the will to go out there and to serve out our purposes that involve others, whatever your life's purpose is. Because I don't want you to come away from this thinking that if you don't have some big life purpose that's going to cure cancer by lunchtime tomorrow, then you failed. There are researchers who are working on that. So I would say that is their life purpose. Your life purpose might be as a business owner, content creator, or an influencer. Your life purpose might be whatever your current job is, to just do the best you can at it. And even if your job isn't that visible, maybe over the course of your career, you change 2 or 3 lives with something that you said, and that's enough. Your purpose might be to be the world's greatest stay-at-home wife or stay-at-home mother. And it is in that purpose of being at home that you are elevating your husband to greatness, or you're raising kids who will go on to do great things. Whatever your purpose is, I believe at some point it will be made clear to you. But that doesn't mean that you need to go out searching for something that seems big and lofty when you have a life purpose that actually is big and lofty, but it appears to be a very small thing. But again, when we don't love ourselves, when we aren't giving that care and consideration and attention to ourselves, we are prevented from really pursuing our purposes to the extent that we need to. When we don't love and care for ourselves, we are prevented from breaking unhealthy generational patterns in our families, because we don't set the example for those of us who have not even just whole unhealthy families, but even if you have toxic family members, like 90% of your family is cool, but there's, a couple of family members who, even when you think about them, the thought is kind of, what the hell, you know what I mean? But when we don't truly love ourselves, we allow those people, we allow their negativity, their toxicity, we allow it to poison us. And once it poisons us, it continues on into the next generation. And we allow these unhealthy generational patterns to continue. Even for those of you who say, well, I don't want to have kids. Yeah, you may not have children of your own. You may not have biological children. But, you may have nieces and nephews. You may have younger cousins who look up to you. You may even have the friends in your life who have kids. They could be influenced by you. So maybe you're not continuing an unhealthy generational pattern in your own family, but you end up passing it into another family and into their bloodline because of your influence. So when our within is not healthy, when that love for ourselves, that commitment to ourselves, that determination to not let ourselves down, that ability to reflect about ourselves and to grow and to take our conversations with ourselves seriously, to get better, to get the help and the accountability. There's no shame in getting help and accountability, whether that's in the form of a therapist or of a coach. But when we don't do those things, the without always ends up messed up. Again, our relationship with our faith becomes messed up. Our relationship with our community becomes messed up. Our relationship with our family does. With our jobs, with our careers, our businesses, with our friendships. Those relationships aren't well because you end up in situations typically when the within feels neglected and abandoned and unloved. The without translates into friendships that are codependent, or friendships in which you're giving your everything and there's no reciprocity. And it's, of course, the same with our romantic relationships. That is how women typically find me, because I'm a dating coach, right? So they find me when the without that is bothering them is the romantic relationships that they're having. So maybe they're not having any because they don't feel worthy. So they just don't put themselves out there to date. Maybe they're having romantic relationships, but they find themselves constantly dating the same man with a different face. So they're constantly dating emotionally unavailable men, and they don't consider the fact that they themselves are emotionally unavailable because they're not giving themselves love. They're not filling up their own cups so that there's overflow to give to other people. They're not giving love to the men that they meet. They are giving performances. They are giving people-pleasing behaviors that seem nice and sweet, but are really, honestly, it's manipulation and control. It is always manipulation and control when you are acting a certain way in order to force other people into loving you. So again, oftentimes women come to me because the without in their romantic relationships is unhealthy. Whether, again, it's codependent or whether they're trying to force someone to love them who just doesn't see their value. And I always believe that when that's the case, your value's been hidden for a reason. It's a sign that you should not be with this person, that this person is not going to be. If this person truly saw your value, they would use it in a way and exploit it in a way that wouldn't be good for you. So there's a reason why something is hiding your value from them. These women who come to me will oftentimes, be in relationships in which, they don't believe that someone who treats them well is possible. I saw a really sad video on TikTok the other day, and it was this woman listing things that she wished a romantic partner would do for her without her asking. And I want to be clear, I don't mean this as a man bashing type situation, because actually this woman, I'm not sure about her exact orientation, but she was definitely LGBTQ. So she was talking about partners and in general, wasn't necessarily directed at a man. But she was saying that she was listing things like she wished someone would write a love letter to her, plan a picnic for her, go on a vacation with her. And I was looking at the comments section of this video and was just shocked at how many women in the comments section were not only saying that they had never had any of these things done for them, but also some of them were making excuses like, oh, that doesn't actually exist. Like, a lot of the women in the comment section were women who date men. So they were saying, oh, men don't actually do that. They just don't. They're not romantic. And, I'm reading these comments and I'm like, who taught you that? Because there are definitely romantic men out there. There are men who are not romantic, but they know how to Google. I can think. So as I'm recording this, my husband will be working on my birthday. So he and I did some things beforehand, and I actually kind of want to keep like our weekend for the most part kind of private to us. But there was one activity that we did, and I asked him how he thought of it. And his response was the place where we ended up going, the city that we're in. He told me that he just Googled romantic things to do in that city. So, even if you end up with a man who, and actually I will say that my husband is romantically inclined. He's actually more the romantic one in our relationship between the two of us. But even if you end up with a man who's not the most romantic, or who sometimes gets stumped on things like this, he'll put in the effort. In fact, see, this episode should air after another episode that I did that was titled "If He Wanted to, He'd Work." So see that episode because I go into more detail there. But my point is, there are a lot of women who, it's not just that they believe that insert the group of people that they date, whether that's men or other women, or even if it's by race. As a Black woman myself, I hear plenty of nonsense about how like Black men don't do this or Black men don't do that. In all cases, some Black men don't do those things. Some white men don't do those things. Some white women don't do those things, etc. But not only do they believe that there's just a whole group of people who can't think properly and don't treat people well, but they also believe that they themselves are not worthy of that, or that there's some other reason why they can't have it. I see a lot of videos of romantic gestures on Instagram and TikTok, and always in the comments section, there's someone saying, "Oh, you're so lucky." The comments don't say, "Good for you, girl. You learned how to love yourself. And once you learned how to love yourself, you set higher expectations, you set higher standards, you gained some boundaries, and you got a backbone. You gained a backbone, so you understand how to enforce those boundaries that you set. Good on you for healing your inner child and learning to love yourself and know that you're worth it. You got lucky." And by default, they are saying that they themselves are just unlucky and will never have that. Not that they need to do work on themselves so that they stop tolerating the bare minimum, or in some cases, tolerating below the bare minimum. So, yeah, this is something I'd like you to reflect on. Just this idea of as within, so without. When you say that you want to have a stable relationship, how stable are you on the inside? When you say you want to be loved and cherished, and you want someone who is attentive to your needs, how attentive are you to your own needs? Do you truly listen to yourself, to your gut, to your instincts? Do you take care of your body when it expresses needs? Do you eat when you're hungry? Go to the bathroom when you actually need to go and not try to hold it for hours. I know these things sound really small and really basic, but it matters. We all agree that it matters to us how other people treat us, right? So shouldn't it matter how you treat yourself? Just the thought, love. So I want to thank you for spending my birthday season with me. You know that I really love you so much. Doing a podcast is not easy, and I definitely don't think I would keep it up if it wasn't for the audience that I have and the listeners that I have, who are some of the most amazing people on the planet. So I am overjoyed with spending a part of my birthday celebrations with you. And I really want you to think about these things that I've said. What does your within look like? And if you aren't satisfied with your within, one, it's no wonder that you're not satisfied with your without. And two, what do you need to do to get there? Again, I love you. As always, continue the conversation with me on social media. I'm at Keisha Rice on Instagram, on TikTok, and actually now on YouTube too, as well as on YouTube now that they have handles for YouTube now. Find me on any of those. Send me a screenshot, DM me a screenshot of this episode and let me know that you enjoyed it and tell me what your takeaways were. And of course, it's always appreciated if you'd also like to leave a review on iTunes and allow me to get this message out to other women as well. But, I want to leave this episode claiming that the next 12 months are going to be a revolution in my life and transformative and abundant in so many ways. And I also want to claim that for you as well, especially if you really start thinking about this concept of as within, so without. Love you so much, and I will talk to you soon. Bye. Hey there. So you made it all the way to the end of the episode, which means I have two things to say. One, thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. And two, you like me. You really like me. So I would appreciate it if you would show that by subscribing to this podcast so that more people can hear about it and enjoy it as much as you do. And if you want to know more about any of the links that I mentioned on this episode or any guests that I've had, be sure to go to KeishaRice.com/links. That's KeishaRice.com/links. I can't wait to talk to you again in the next episode. So see you then.